Once again, it is so wonderful to be in a physical sanctuary. Like I said before, it's been far too long. So come, beloveds, come with your pains, with your joyous noise, come with your embodied love. Embodied love. What does it even mean, embodied love? There is a great power in love. And when we embrace that power of love, we transcend into new realms of being. Our breath becomes the embodied breath of love, and our living becomes the dreams of ancestors. There is a great steadfast power in love, a great steadfast power that holds space for all to embrace, to seek, to long for, and to receive such love. Yet power without love, in the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., power without love is reckless and abusive. Power without love is reckless and abusive. And love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love, correcting everything that stands against love. We need love to guide us, love to change the world, love to learn how to be human again in time. And we need love to sustain us and hold us accountable as well. This type of love is not a love that we can simply name, but a love that we must embody, one that we must live out, a love that we must embrace, calling us forward and pushing us deeper within our bones and our being, a love that we must make known, not just by our words, but by our actions and our living, by our very being. This is what the embodiment of love looks like. This is what the embodiment of love must feel like. This is what the embodiment of love is all about. Being present in the moment, in our body, in our minds, in our souls. This presence overflows out of our hands, out of our feet, out of our seats, and into the streets, onto the hearts of others. This is embodied love. This is love on fire. And this is love that will change the world. This is love that will liberate and transform our living and the lives of others. This is also the kind of love that Jesus preached before it became twisted by the hands of white man who took it out of context. This is the kind of love that we find in the book of Corinthians, where it is written that love is patient, love is kind, it is not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not self-serving, it is not self-seeking, it does not dishonor others, it is not easily angered, and it keeps no record of wrong. Imagine that, a love that keeps no record of wrong. This, beloveds, is also the type of love that is spoken of in the Gospel of John, speaking about servitude, enslavement, friendship, and love, where it is also written in a new version of the Bible, or perhaps a much older version, the First Nations version, written by and for indigenous perspectives. To walk this road with me, you must love each other in the same way in which I have loved you. I no longer see you as a servant, but as friend. Master does not share their hearts or their plans with their servants. They do not put everything on the table, but we have shown you everything we have. And so, what does it mean to be embodied love? As I was speaking about, I grew up in a very conservative Christian family. I grew up in an adopted family as a mixed-race American living in a white passing family, not really knowing where I came from. And then I went to seminary. And I see Christina laughing over here, but seminary changes the way you look at everything. And so in 6 months' time, I went from not knowing my ancestral roots to knowing the roots, to knowing that I'm 25% black, to changing my pronouns, to changing the way that I type and spell my name, and to not only discovering those ancestral roots, but beginning to see how my ancestors embodied love, how they brought their pains, their joys, and their struggles, and how they wrote to liberate their lives. And so what I'm going to share with you now is deeply personal. It is deeply hard to talk about, and it could be hard to hear. So if you need to turn your camera off on Zoom, if you need to get up and walk around your space at home or the space here in the sanctuary, or leave this room, or leave the room online, please feel free to do so. I can say it ends on a good note. One of my ancestors, Elizabeth Bell Shelton, was born on September 12, 1993, in Morristown, Tennessee, to a mother who was 43 and a father who was 38. In 1945, when Elizabeth was 11, her mother passed away suddenly. In 1945, 3 months later, Elizabeth is 12. Her brother, Herbert Lynn Shelton, dies in a car crash. Again, months later, another brother dies. This time, it makes the paper. In 1945, being a person of color was not important in the state of Tennessee. And so, for something to make the paper, it must be tragic or earth-shattering, especially when the paper was owned by all whites. But the headline in 1945 read this about Herbert Lynn Shelton: "Negro dies after being stabbed." It goes on to talk about how he had just returned from service, how the city of Morristown had thrown a rally for all of the white servicemen. He was not invited. And 16 days later, a white man stabs him over a woman. Again, we report the things that matter. And so that mattered enough to be reported. But it goes on from there. At 13 years old, in 1948, Elizabeth Bell Shelton had a child, William Spencer Shelton, who became my grandfather. And in 1950, at the age of 16, facing the death of two of her brothers, of her mother, And that child that's my grandfather, her father raped her. So at 16 years old, Elizabeth Bell Shelton took her own life. Again, we report the things that matter. And in 1950, a 16-year-old colored teen taking her own life didn't matter, but it did. For in 1950, on April 9th, this is what the Morristown Journal had to say. Colored woman commits suicide. A coroner came to the home at 5:02 to pronounce Elizabeth Bell Shelton colored, found dead in bed from a self-inflicted bullet wound to the heart. The father of the girl, who was an employee at a local hotel, sitting on his front porch, ran to the room to see his daughter dead in bed with a gun in her hand. Again, we report what matters, and we report on how it mattered. There's so much that this story doesn't say, that this story doesn't name, but the fact that 1950, that 1948, that 1945, this family, my family, was reported not once, but 3 times in the news, being one of 5 black families at that time in the city. You start wondering, or at least I start wondering, what this family was about, how they embodied and embraced all of the pain, what narratives they begin to weave and tell about Elizabeth taking her own life after such tragic events took place. This, beloveds, living with, embracing, working to understand, sitting and walking in the pain of generations of ancestors is what it means to embody love. This is what the embodiment of justice, the embodiment of healing, the embodiment of liberation and world transformation is all about. This, beloveds, is how we must live our theology out loud and how we have to begin changing the world. This is what the embodiment of love is all about. Not about the productivity, not simply about the words that we say, but past all of that. And so to end, I leave you with the words of another chosen beloved ancestor that some may know as co-moderator of the Unitarian Universalist Association before their untimely passing. I know them as a mentor, as a friend, as someone who one day at Tennessee Valley UU, after I had finished helping with the service long before I'd actually answered a call to ministry, came up to me, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "Roddy, so when the hell are you going to seminary?" The words of Alondria Williams. It is time, embodiment time, the embodiment not of productivity, past productivity, the embodiment of radical love, care, and sanctuary. It is time, embodiment, living one's values out loud. Let me every day live my values out loud. Let us every day live our values out loud, embodying our values, not the productivity quotient, beyond productivity, past productivity. What is productivity? True embodiment, life. And so, beloveds, let it echo. Make them hear you. Go out and tell your stories. for we are not the only ones. May it be so. May we make it so. Ashe. Amen. From another beloved ancestor, a brilliant author, a wonderful human, bell hooks, writing on love and relationship. Love is a combination of care, commitment, knowledge, responsibility, respect, and trust. Living simply makes loving simple. Knowing how to be in solidarity is central to the art of loving. When we can be alone, when we can be with others without using them as a means to escape. Beloveds, our service is coming to a close, but yours must continue on, renewed, embodied in love, on fire.